A lot of people saw the track, like, hey, if I do these things, XYZ, line up ABC, do my 1,000 calls a week, blah, 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 I'll make success. And eventually I'll be the manager. And then maybe I'll get a shot at equity, right? And I was just kind of like, I don't care about any of that. I want to do what I love.
Welcome to We Built This Brand, where we talk to the creators and collaborators behind your favorite brands. Today, I'm talking with the Copier Warrior himself, Dale Dupree. Dale is the founder and leader of the Sales Rebellion, and his unique approach to sales and marketing inspires new hope for the industry. This is a guy who cut his teeth in a metalcore band and now channels that DIY attitude into changing the game. Are you ready to take down the established empire of sales? Well, then suit up. Here's my conversation with Dale Dupree. Welcome to We Built This Brand.
Thanks, man.
We're just diving in.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. Thank you for your patience as we've been getting set up and everything.
Good.
It's a lot of fun to have you, so excited to talk to you today. You know, a lot of who we've been talking to recently have been agencies, like marketing agencies, PR agencies, folks like that, and always love being able to talk to someone who runs what I would call like a true brand, a business that is not just representing other people, but you're actually doing something, creating something unique in the marketplace. And I think what you're doing with the Sales Rebellion is really cool. So happy to dive into that with you today. Would love to start, as we always do, with a little bit of your background. And if you don't know who Dale Dupree is, there's a lot of places you can learn about your story, and would love to hear just your Reader's Digest version, because I know we've talked about it a bunch. Everywhere I look you up, it's like, all right, your background. And 30 minutes in, we finally get into some meat. So I'd like to kind of bypass that today and dive more into where you're at with Sales Rebellion and everything else. So I'll let you take it away.
Thanks. It's easier this way too for me, because typically when I do those podcasts that you're talking about, people they go, tell us a little bit about yourself. And then they hear like 4 things and they go, yo, you got to talk more about that. And then all of a sudden we're 30 minutes in and we haven't talked. But Dale Dupree, my friends, they call me the Copier Warrior. Now, to ultimately understand where I come from, you got to go back a little bit further real quick. In 1984, my father broke away from the status quo of sales, selling copy machines for the corporate monster, doing awesome #1 rep, in line to take over the business. He left all that safety, all that security, everything that he had built, because he just didn't like the way they did business. It had nothing to do with what he was making or ultimately like being an entrepreneur even. He didn't like how they treated people. He didn't like how they ran their operation. He wanted more, not just for himself, but for his customers and his client base. He felt like he could get that too. So he said, by the grace of God, I'm going to go build something. And by the way, too, just to like mention it, although my father eventually became a born again Christian at that point, and when I say by the grace of God, my dad was like an atheist, right? So he just leap of faith, like literally on himself in that moment, said, this is something that I need to do. And I shouldn't call him an atheist. He grew up in a Christian household. He did not know who God was and didn't really care at all, right? But the year after 1984 is my birth year, 1985. And people joke with me all the time. They say, dude, Dale was born with toner running through his veins. Okay, so because here's my dad. He's 10 years into the copier industry from an injury, a football injury. He broke his neck. It kept him from getting into the NFL, basically. Mm-hmm. And instead, he was like, what am I going to do? And he sold paper like Dwight Schrute, and that led to copiers. And then all of a sudden, he's opening his own business. So it's my legend, right? It's my legacy. So I spent years, from a child to an adult teen, wandering the halls of my father's business, letting that toner really sink into that, to my into those veins and into my bloodstream. I learned the industry without ever really trying to learn the industry, if you will. And what I really learned is I learned how to become a servant leader. I learned how to give experiences. I learned how to be a man that didn't need recognition. That's what I learned. And I learned all those things from my father in a nutshell. There's a lot more that I learned on top of that, but like how to not lose money when you're selling stuff and, lots of other things, right? But ultimately that shaped me. It gave me an imagination. And my father was always very entrepreneurial to say, yo, Dale, I want you to do what you love. I don't want you to do what you think is going to make you a lot of money and whatnot. So with that same motivation, I took it, and I actually ended up skipping college and touring in a band on Warner Brothers Records.
That's
eventually.
Awesome.
I mean, we started on Pluto, indie label. My boy Brian, shout out to Brian if you're listening to this, influential entrepreneur in my life as well, for sure. You meet people along the way that have such a huge impact on you, and they never even know. in the first place. But yeah, that man helped me and guided me and got me into Sony distribution and Universal or Warner Brothers Records distribution. And we had people buying our stuff in Tokyo, and our albums, right? And so for me, like I could see, I had this vision, right? But then I saw it come to life. And it was never the glitz and glamour that people say it is at the end of the day, because we weren't the Rolling Stones. That's how you have to. That's the only way to make money in the music industry is sell your soul and become a 50 year band, right? But I digress. The passion was why we did it. The love is why we did it. And eventually, those things brought me back to the copier world. And I would say that there was some instances and circumstances that put me there, but you have to really understand that I started in this place of creativity. I started in this place of entertainment. I started in this place that I loved, that I wanted, that I dreamed of becoming, if you will. I even turned down somewhere in the ballpark of a dozen scholarships, some partial, some full rides. Most of them, there was only 2 academic ones, but most of them were sports related. So here I'm an athlete, but I play in a metal band, and I'm like the weirdest kid you've ever met right at the time. Just imagine long-haired dude dunking on you and then moshing, later that night, right? Like I was a very unique person, right? So, and I hopefully I still am to some capacity, but got back into copier sales, spent 13 years doing it. And that's where I created the moniker, the Copier Warrior, and I built my reputation on the back of servant leadership principles, and ultimately on the back of a ton of failure, a ton of risk, which led to a lot of reward at the end of the day that I don't think a lot of people at my age would have ever really even thought about, especially in the industry I was in. I think a lot of people saw the track that were in my industry, like, hey, if I do these things, XYZ, line up ABC, do my 1,000 calls a week, blah, 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 I'll make success, and eventually I'll be the manager, and then maybe I'll get a shot at equity, right? And I was just kind of like, I don't care about any of that. I want to do what I love. I kept going back to that. I want to make people feel seen and heard, and not because I have to do that, but because they deserve that. And that ultimately I'll build a community similar to the one that my father did for himself. Eventually that led to me leaving. We were talking about the corporate world a little while ago. Like it led to me leaving corporate, knowing that in my heart, more so than anywhere else, it wasn't a place for me, and that there was no way I was going to change it. That's impossible. But instead I said, yeah, but I can go and start a movement, and I can win the hearts and minds of people that feel the same way that I do, that want to be more than just a salesperson, that desire more for their life than just transactions, that want to experience it, that want to breathe life into something that's dead and stale. And bada bing, bada boom. 2019, launched the Sales Rebellion, had no idea what I was doing, still don't really understand what I'm doing, but I'm 6 years in and I haven't taken a paycheck from anybody else but myself. And man, even if it crashes and burns tomorrow and I'm done with it, what a ride it's been for sure. So
that's exciting. That's really cool. And I know there's a lot more to that on all fronts. One of the things that I think is really interesting is how you've kind of kept this creative element going this whole time. Like there's been this, there's been kind of this pattern of, you wanted to do music, you wanted to do something artistic, then you got into sales, which can be very structured and very formal, and you found a way to make it really creative and really unique, and dare I say, a little metal. I found as I was looking back, I was checking some stuff out last night, and I came across your band, and Imperial, is that right?
That's it.
Yeah, and very metal, and that is the genre that you would consider it, right? I just want to make sure you weren't like, oh, it's actually this subgenre gothcore. I don't know. I'm just kidding, but you know what I'm getting at. But very metal. And then I went and checked out your video that you have for the Copier Warrior, which was really fun. Yeah. And it just so many elements of it. I was like, okay, this guy hasn't left his roots. Like he's still got some of it with him as he's traveling. And then where you are now, even within, the Sales Rebellion and things, there's a lot of creative elements there that are very, very unique. So it's cool to see you being true to yourself as part of the process too. And so with that, we get into starting this rebellion, this Sales Rebellion. Tell me, how did you come up with that idea? I mean, you left, you got burned out, and you wanted to start something, but where did you go from there?
I'm such a nerd. I in the beginning, when I started to look at this idea of leaving the corporate landscape. And let me just say too that I didn't suffer from burnout in the corporate landscape or even in the private business side of things too. I mean, I did a lot. I worked really hard. I preach the idea of not doing that as much because of my experiences and the things I learned. And there was also a balance there. I hate to call it that, but really what there was a rebellion there. So and like to just give a little context to that, in 2013, I made the first year that I made six figures. Basically, like 2012 was the year my father sold his business. And by the way, I started in 2008 as well too. It was late 2007. So I was picking the copy machines up from the companies that you're talking about, going like, yeah, we're out of business now. And they were shredded files everywhere. I mean, Severance, the TV show, like we were talking about. I mean, it was like war zone stuff, dude, that we were experiencing. So this is like my introduction to the B2B space, right? Oh, this is a great place. Like, no, not. I felt terrible about the B2B space and thought, well, this sucks. And why I'm going to go work at a fast food restaurant and at least know that I'm going to make a paycheck and then like do something else. Right. That I had that temptation many times, but ultimately I came back to this space for myself in my upbringing of business that stayed the course. And by 2012, 2013, right, my dad's business sells. I go over to the new company through the acquisition. And I'll tell you right now that I was ready for that. I was so fired up for that, dude. 4 years of basically rebuilding a business and, hitting $1 million in there, selling, for any of my copier homies listening, used equipment and hitting $1 million, which I think a lot of people respect that thing more than anything. So, because if a machine costs $15,000 brand new, used it costs $2,000. Right, that's the literal cost.
That's a lot of volume.
It's a lot of copy machines, dude. I mean, I think one year I was over 110 total accounts, like with my father, and net new business. The average in the copier space at the time, especially, was like 12 to 15, maximum. Right, so I 10x'd, if you will. Shout out to Uncle G or whoever, Grant Cardone, isn't that his name? Maybe 10x or whatever the hell. Let's call it 11x. I 11x'd it. I went one step further than Uncle G. Anyway, so the idea though was that like I took that to the corporate landscape. I never lost myself in the process. People tried to get me to lose myself for sure. Hey man, you need to be at your desk more often. Yeah, right, dude. No, I'm in the field. I'm a salesperson, right? So when I looked at this idea of starting a rebellion, it was really just looking at all the things that I had already rebelled against in the first place. From being like slapped on the hand and saying, hey man, this is the marketing you're passing out. You stabbing copy machines in the middle of the woods. Like, this isn't acceptable. Like, at least you have clothes on, but this is strange. We don't like this. To that same group of leaders coming back to me and going, do whatever you want. Because I'll never forget the first email that ever went out from my second generation of leaders. Shout out to Rich Johnson, by the way, if he's listening. He was one of the good ones. But in that second generation of leaders, I got Steve Clapp. I love this man. He's such an incredible guy. But he sent an email out after the first year, and he said, in the words of Rocky Balboa, and it wasn't Rocky, it was somebody in like Rocky Balboa, was like, he's not human. And that fired me up so much to hear a person that knew Jack about 1 year of my life, to see what I was capable of, and to tell me that. It was so exhilarating. It was so, just in general, it was powerful and from a motivational standpoint for my life, not just my business walk. And I took that fire and I turned it into six figures that next year for the first time in my life, right? Because I had to not take a paycheck, man. Like, you remember 2008, right? Like, imagine running a small business with your dad, basically, and you're like the only ones left that aren't getting paid at one point because you're trying to keep the employees on. You're paying them. It was a wild ride, dude. So when I hit those milestones for myself, I think the number one thing I realized was that it wasn't better than the 4 years that I had spent leading up to this. Like, I hadn't suddenly like changed my life. Like, I was already changing my life 4 years ago by making the decision. The journey became something that I started to romanticize. And so then I started thinking, well, if I can make, my first year I made $180,000 when I made six figures. So it wasn't like 101,000. It was like, bam, like from 65 grand, that was the most I ever made, to 180,000.
That's awesome.
It was a crazy jump, right? And that was 2012, 2013, right? So from there, it was insane what happened to me. And so when I looked at, mean, starting a movement around money,
Mm-hmm.
that was never the motivation. Starting a movement around loving what you do and achieving ultimate freedom from those things, that was the motivation. And so it had nothing really ultimately to do with burnout or being sick and tired of stuff, or, my corporate job, definitely, they brought me back to work way faster than they should have when my baby was born. And they cited, you haven't actually earned, you're 2 months shy of your tenure here to earn those extra weeks. So sorry about that. Things like that really just set me off. And then words that were expressed to me by my leaders. And I mean, I don't know if I can even say it on this podcast, but
You can say it and we can take it out later.
I've never heard the term in a meeting with the HR person present and all the leadership of the organization, the word sucker used, pointed at an individual.
Good Lord.
Never heard that.
Wow.
And I've heard it in a fist fight. But never
yeah.
In a boardroom setting, whoa, buddy, this is intense. And really, I realized that I was in a place that when people were powerful enough, they could get away with anything. So it had nothing to do with man, I'm sick of this. And it had everything to do with, man, wouldn't it be nice if we changed the way this worked? And even if we didn't change the way these people worked, that we built our own thing.
Yeah.
And we did it ourselves.
Yeah.
And we ignored all this crap and all these rules and all this stupidity. And we did the things that I was able to do to make myself a millionaire, make other people millionaires, and ultimately gain financial freedom that led to ultimate freedom in my life. So I took some left turns, some right turns in there, but hopefully that hits your question well.
No. It's good because you're showing kind of the rebellious stage of it, but it was really about a rebellion for something better. And for me, in just thinking about my own career, that was a lot of what I experienced too, of people are getting away with stuff they shouldn't be getting away with. And, I was told at one point in my sales career to lie to a customer. Bold-faced lie to a customer. Now, how do you think my sales career went after I told my boss no? Did not go well.
Yeah.
And so that became the tension and the ultimate impetus for me moving on and leaving sales entirely I thought I was leaving it. I didn't really, but I thought I was leaving it for a while. And I didn't want to be around that. I didn't want to be around an environment that encouraged that and thought of that as the winner and those people as the good people. So I can totally relate to that. And that call to something better. I think salespeople need to hear that because it can often be a very toxic environment. So tell me a little bit more. So you get this name, Rebellion. Where else I feel like there's something else with Rebellion too. It feels very Star Warsy. Yeah. I've noticed some Star Wars themes to what you do.
Yeah, you got
Is there some elements there?
Yeah. Imperial, the Sales Rebellion. Yeah. It really was easy for me to decide to call this a rebellion. And then it felt like everybody wanted to use the word after I used it. So it's almost as if everybody was thinking about it. And I was the first person to just dare mighty things and say I don't care if I'm in a corporate landscape. I'm going to call this what I want to call it. And 1,000%, I'm a rebel, dude. I'm a rebel scum, bro. I'm a big fan of Luke Skywalker, his story. I know it's not real and it's fictional, ladies and gentlemen, but I just love this idea of the farm boy who knows nothing but his parents' upbringing, who are not even his parents, by the way. Gosh, spoilers, by the way, Darth Vader and Luke, there's something happening there that maybe I shouldn't talk about. Anyway, but but his erraticness, his just his energy, his excitement to go to war, against the Empire and to fight back, and man, I was inspired by that. And my mother was the big push in those things. She loved Star Wars too for the storytelling and the sci-fi, and it was one of her first movies that she ever saw in the theaters, and because that was a big deal at that point in history in the 70s, and my mom was prime. She was in college, and it was perfect timing for someone like her to be immersed into those stories. And she's a pretty straight-laced woman, to be quite frank with you. But she's fun, she's quirky, she's got a big imagination. And sometimes I wonder if ultimately I get my imagination from my mom, and she's just never really said that, in the first place. But because of that, I operate in nostalgia, dude. And I believe that most people do as well. I believe that when I get a marketing piece, or I field a sales call, that if there's some type of experiential moment there that leads toward curiosity, toward nostalgia, toward the idea of even like taking a little bit of a risk, like some adventure, if you will, that people will respond better, more efficiently, and different. And like different is what all of us need from people in responses, because otherwise it's just the status quo, and otherwise like we're just noise. So when I thought of, like, how do I name a corporate brand, it made so much sense for me to just go back to the things that drive me, that I'm passionate about, that I love, like a sci-fi thriller called Star Wars, that like which is even crazier, right? That kids, around us coming up in a whole new generation think that the Acolyte is Star Wars, and I'm like, nah, bro, it's the Return of the Jedi, dude. That's Star Wars, right? But anyway, the goal was really also to think about what is the evolution of the buyer. So if I call my company Dale Dupree Sales Training or something more corporate, well, in about 10 years, who am I selling to? Well, I'm selling to kids, man. I'm selling to the next generation. 65% of decision makers, even with the groups that we support in the B2B space, from solar to copiers to IT to the financial side of things, like you name it, like fintech, SaaS, they sell to people that are between the ages of 25 and 45, dude. That's the majority of buyers now. So if, again, like in my mind, just like you have looked at my brand and said, this is cool, this is fun. Like, that's the point, is to let people know that, like, hey, like, stretch your legs a little bit, man. Like, unbutton the top button, take your tie off, even, like, be yourself, be authentic. It's okay. It's fine.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point with like who you're marketing towards too. Like that positioning is saying, hey, we're here for the people who see this, get this, understand it, which is going to attract a certain type of person to you, right? Which is really helpful for you as well. But also with that positioning, I tend to forget about it, but as you're saying it, I'm like, let me think about all the sales training I've ever been in. Oh yeah, there was SOX at AT&T, the Science of Consultative Selling, and it was a whole formulaic thing. I even had to get SOX sales certified, which included like sales tests and role plays and all this stuff. I did Northwestern Mutual at one point in my career. Gosh. Like that was actually my first experience, was insurance sales with Northwestern Mutual in a market where I didn't have family too, which was really tough. And so like it was, I've been through all that. And then I've also dealt a little bit with like Sandler sales. And the one constant theme through all these is they are boring. They are not fun. It makes sales out to be just a science and a numbers game, which it can very well be and very much is at times, but it's very much just this boring process, and you're breathing new life into it. And I think that's what I find really interesting about it.
Word. I like the concept too of, so I feed off of the old to create what I have put together. So I like going back to the Zig Ziglars and like learning about what they were trying to relay, or the David Sandlers, right. and then finding the gaps first, and then also like understanding their science, if you will, because the way that helps me to break it down is I get to say, okay, cool. So in all science, it becomes predictable is the thought process. Well, humans are not predictable. So if I boil everything down to a science, and I'm Sandler sales training, it's going to definitely work throughout the 80s and the 90s and maybe even some of the early 2000s. But over time, like, people are going to start to understand what you're doing to them. Right. That science, that predictability of that science with an unpredictable environment, they don't mesh. Yeah. And so at a certain point, you lose it. And so here we go with the whole, like, this is, anybody listening, this is the literal purpose, let's just say, of the sales rebellion. The purpose of the sales rebellion is to meet people where they are, not to force something into their ecosystem. Science forces stuff into your ecosystem. It says, well, no, what's important is your ROI. Of course, we all want to make money off something in the business environment, but that's not the most. What's actually important is what I'm doing with that money, my people that I'm hiring, how I'm supporting their families, my customers and their happiness, not just because I had a good product, but because I treated them like normal, rational, intelligent human beings. Right. And that I respected the emotional side of things as well too. Groups like Sandler, the Challenger Sale, they don't respect the emotions of people. They don't care about how you feel. They need you to meet them where they are. That's what their systems are all designed to do. And mad respect for, the old guard and the people that have built what they've built, but they live in a fantasy world now. They live in a fantasy world. They put out books like right literally at the peak of COVID saying, "Oh, I'm an expert now in selling on Zoom. Here's my book." Like these are the companies. This is who they are. There's no integrity in that. 4 weeks of selling on Zoom and you're an expert. I mean, GTFO, bro. Like that to me is absolute garbage and totally nuts. And ultimately too, like expertise of selling doesn't come from sales experts, dude. It comes through the way we experience the buying market and the way that we buy ourselves. Just the same, because we're buyers too, right? Ultimately at the end of the day. So that really, like, the science of sales, the numbers of sales, those are mythology, in my opinion. The art of sales is the only thing that is a constant and that will always, for generations to come, until you and I are robots, right, doing this interview, which no one will watch at that point anyway. I mean, just robots watching robots talking to robots.
Well,
I mean,
that's part of why we're here in person.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, real
this is the
human
rebellion,
flesh.
bro. You're leading in one in the podcast space, right?
That's
so,
right.
But yeah, the point being though that like emotion, the human experience, that is the thing that's always consistent within sales and marketing, and that's why people that look beyond what is corporate, what is acceptable in the business box, what is even appropriate in the business box, those people fail constantly. Like, I want you so lit up that you're angry with me. Because when I call you and I go, "Hey, this is Dale, the guy that sent you that thing that made you angry," and you're like, "I hated that," and I go, "Yeah, but like, you remembered me for the first time. You remembered a salesperson."
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. And then when you understand the context of like why I sent you what I sent you in the mail to have this experience, and you give it a couple days, you're a $400,000 sale, and not because I like did some weird science on you, but because I met you where you were and you didn't even know it at the time. But because I understand you and I made the effort to do those things, right? It might feel cold, but man, the internet, AI, when you use it right, powerful places in order to like, for me to learn about Chris. Knows, just like you, we're going out and checking Imperial out before we got together, right? Like, you'd have never known that without the option of being able to go and do that research in the first place. And that's, I believe that it's not about, I'm not a big personalized everything kind of guy. I'm just like I'm rational about that. Man, if you just like mention one thing that's important to me, I'm going to listen differently. I'm going to trust you differently. There's more credibility here. So there's a rant for you.
I like it though. I mean, finding that human connection with people is something, and even human emotion is something we're learning as we've interviewed other folks for this podcast. Like, it's a big thing for to find that human element to a sale, to a purchase. Impulse buying is becoming more and more common right now with the way the internet's going and things like that. And a lot of that's driven by people that are bored, that are tired, that are interested. It just gets you just right time, right place. You're always looking at your phone. So why not throw an ad up there for something that looks mildly intriguing and dirt cheap? Or claims to be dirt cheap. If you've spent any time on TikTok, you know what I'm talking about. And it's just, they're crappy products, but you get them because it's like, well, you know what? It's only $20. If it doesn't work, I can throw it away, you know?
Yeah.
And it's sad that we're at that point in the economy, but like, you know, but that's just that human element. And even as you get into sales, like, yeah, if you can't interact with people in a way that grabs their attention, like you're just wasting your breath. So how do you get people to respond? For those that may not know much about the Sales Rebellion, like what are kind of the core things that you do to help people? And then specifically, like what kind of, like, I don't want to say products because I don't know that that's the right way to put it. It might be, but what are the things that you all offer to help people with this sales process to think differently?
It's a great question. And you put it all the right way. Yeah. We believe in layman's terms. So you call it a product. If I call it something different, you're not going to know what it is. Right. We're always about meeting people in those spaces. So ultimately, though, like what we do is we create differentiation when you find it. So if you see that the Rebellion has curriculum, but so does Sandler, most likely you're going to be drawn over here to this Sales Rebellion thing, especially because of the aesthetics of what we provide for you, the experience that we give you. It's not like boost your sales by 20% today. It's more like Hey, are you tired of doing the same stuff that your boss keeps telling you to do over and over again that barely helps you hit quota every month? That makes you stressed, makes you anxious, makes life at home harder, makes you drink, makes you pick up bad habits in general, makes you hate your life. And you've been doing it for 7 years now. What the hell? All right, we'll come over here. We have something for you that will elicit freedom in your life. And like when people see the difference in those things, it's like, well, they saw it because we called it curriculum, but they bought it because we pulled at their heartstrings and ultimately because we offer something so much different than everybody else. And that's really what we offer, man. We offer this idea of changing the way that your sales works. So the thing is, though, is that we're not cutting edge, dude. Yeah. Like I have traced contact marketing back with the father of contact marketing, if you will, Stu Heineck. He's a silent mentor turned really good friend of mine at this point. Cool. It's actually going to be at Totality in Knoxville, Tennessee, August 26th, 7th, and 8th. Shout out to Totality.
Fascinating. Okay.
If you want to meet him and learn about his crazy life, 50 years almost of contact marketing. It's a wild ride.
It's amazing.
But through people like him, I was able to find like the Medici, bro. Like Da Vinci created a painting for the Medici to like sell this other banking family on using their network, if you will, by painting this picture through this famous artist, right? Like to get these people to basically be like, this is awesome. Let's take a meeting with these guys. Like this is something that's been happening forever, dude.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we've lost touch with it because of the word scalability first and foremost, and the greed that people have toward quick, fast, easy money that doesn't last, by the way. Yeah. Right? Most of the companies that quick, fast, easy money, they sell, or they have to become an acquisition god among the marketplace in order to remain relevant to begin with. Yeah. It's a crazy that the biggest brands out there are big because they bought everybody else that was coming in to beat them, right? And that's what the like literal strategy is of business these days. That to me is not sustainable, bro. Yeah. It's monopolizing networks and marketplaces. No one likes it on the consumer side. If you can only get one type of cable TV to your house, and one internet connection and one phone, provider, what the hell? How is that a free marketplace? Welcome to America, right? The concept of what we sell is getting back to the roots of like, you don't have to build a big company and sell to some guy. You could just do this by yourself for the next 25 years, make plenty of money, be happy, live in ultimate freedom, give yourself time back to your life, spend it on the things that you love, and really literally do it different than everybody else. Because if I send a trash can to an office where I could potentially make $10,000 a year on a B2B product for a 4-year contract, right? 40 grand, right? One office, one outcome, one type of revenue, like if I'm looking at ROIs and everything else. And instead of like saying, let's do the science and let's make a 47 touch sequence that lasts, 4 months with emails and phone calls and some drip stuff and blah, blah, blah. If instead, if I were to just say like, now we're going to instead just do like a 10 touch sequence, and we are going to take our time. If it takes a couple months, that's fine. Yeah. But we're going to give people an intense experience unlike anything they've ever gotten. And so that person has people calling on them all day long. Hey, can I get 15 minutes of your time? Hey, this is a sales call. Do you want to hang up? Like, no shade. Like those things work sometimes, right? For sure. Yeah. But the obnoxiousness really and like the tone of voice is because like that's what a lot of people who buy, that's how they feel about it. Like a lot of them will still entertain it just because it's different, but they're like, it kind of gets old over time. But that's with anything like we just talked about over time. Like people catch on, man. But if instead I send you an experience and it's not like a catchy line or a let's just say a misleading subject line about like chicken soup or something stupid like these people think are a pattern interrupt, but instead it's a trash can and you're like, what is this? And you open it up and there's a letter that says, hey, I threw this away because sales marketing, and brochures and white papers, they're trash. Yeah, you toss them anyway, so made it easier and just like pre-crumpled and pre-threw mine away. Then some people would say that that's a gimmick. And while I would agree, I would also say, like, in this buying market, it's actually the most relevant thing you could tell somebody, because all they do is get inundated with cold calls all day long. They freaking hate it, bro. And so I can literally speak the love language of the person I'm calling on by doing that.
Yeah, and it's a great pattern interrupt too, because you don't expect to get a crumpled up letter in the mail. You look at it and you go, why the crap am I getting this? Like, what's going on? And then, you know, you're more likely to read it because you're curious about why it was crumpled in your envelope to begin with. Want to launch a podcast without the hassle? HumblePod makes podcasting easy. From concept to launch, we'll help you create a professional, engaging show. Already have a podcast? We handle editing, show notes, transcriptions, and even video production, so you can focus on your content. With our tailored services, you get high-quality production, seamless publishing, and expert support at every step. Whether you're starting fresh or leveling up, HumblePod ensures your podcast sounds amazing and reaches the right audience. Visit HumblePod.com to get started today. Did you say at one point you even, like, I think I recall this from previous thing I saw where you actually, I think you talked, you do like you send them like a basketball goal for the trash can or something like that as well.
Yeah. You know, there's like variations of the crumpled letter for sure. I learned it the origination of the crumpled letters that I was tearing my business cards, but the first, like, in the middle and telling people would say, can I get your business card? And I would hand it to them. And by the way, I actually had somebody manufacture them where they Velcroed in the middle. It cost me so much money, but it was like one of the coolest things I ever did. But I was sitting in my car one day, and after like an FU experience, like a literal get the F out of my office experience. And I'd gone through stuff like that before, but this one was just super intense. And I thought to myself, like, what could I walk in with? Because the business card was like something I gave at the end, when they asked. I got the scissors that had like the texture to them. So it looked like jagged edges, when I cut down the middle. So it was cool. People loved it, but I didn't walk in the door and like say, hey, here's my business card. It's pre-torn, so you could throw it away. It didn't feel right. So I started coming up with this idea of, well, most of what we're doing it angers people. Mm-hmm. And I actually at the time, I came up with 2 other letters that I just didn't try, because then I heard about a version of the crumpled letter, if you will, which I'll get into. But I burnt the edges of a letter and I put it in a matchbox. And I just put like, light this on fire on the top of the matchbox. And I was like, that's sick. And then I did a coffee stain letter, because I was thinking about my demographic. Who am I selling to? Why would it be relevant to them? And the second was like IT. I deal with IT all the time. So I did like Mountain Dew, and then I did coffee. And I put these stains of Mountain Dew and these stains of coffee on the letters, and I just put like.
So wait, were you hand staining them?
Yeah, dude, I was doing all this by hand at the time, right?
That's impressive. Okay,
I was like sitting in my office like a scientist, just like making an absolute mess. And my boss like, "What are you doing, man?" Like, and this was my dad at the time, so that was my boss at this stage. This was 2009 when I first started dabbling in contact marketing, right? But then I heard this story about this guy who he was sending letters to people through real estate. And he was like friend of a friend kind of thing. So I didn't read about this. I heard it from the horse's mouth when he saw my letters. He goes, dude, check this out. And this guy was sending, in the real estate world, he was sending to all these people who had listed their houses for 90 days. Mm-hmm. He was sending them advertising and getting like a less than 1% response. And so like he'd send it, and 10 days later when he got no response, he'd send it again, except this time he put like a marker, a red Sharpie on it that said, don't throw me away again. It was almost like it got resurrected from the trash. And I was like, damn, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
The guy was calling it the crumpled letter. I think it was actually crumpled too, which is why he called it that. But that was the story I heard. And then I took one of those letters I had, and I balled it up and I opened it back up, and I was like, yo, this is a really good idea. Bought some little mini trash cans. And then I made envelopes too that said like crumpled letter inside, using like the red handwriting like he had, where he had put, don't throw me away again. I just put crumpled letter inside, ... Because I felt and from my perspective, it was, how do we drive curiosity in people? Right. How do we create relevance to the messaging? Right. drive back to what we fix and help people with, and then also give them this epic experience that makes them curious, excited, even if they're like, yeah, it was whatever, because they're just not a very fun person, that they would never forget what you did to them because of the way that typically salespeople reach out in the first place. So that's like the entire context of how I started to create this idea of doing things different. And that's what the Sales Rebellion does, man. We literally, imagine that you get a response from somebody in your typical sales walk that says, hey, reach out to me in 12 months. What do we typically do? We reach out to them for the next 6 months, like every other month kind of thing, with like some stupid marketing thing that we think they'll like and enjoy, but I have no idea. They didn't even ask for that in the first place. But imagine like a month later, they get a save the date in the mail, like you would send out when you get married or have a bar mitzvah or whatever, right? But imagine a save the date, and it's like, the alignment, or you could even call it the matrimony of ABC company and XYZ company. And then it's like the date they asked you 12 months later, and like, no, hey, I know you asked me to reach out in 12 months. So I'm saving the date for us, and I look forward to meeting you then. And they have this whole experience, and they're like, they see two things, like either this person is a genius or they're insane. And both of those things I believe to be really good options, as opposed to indifference, right? Because that's how they look at 99% of salespeople, is they're indifferent to them. You don't exist in their mind, in their heart, in their ecosystem, period, because you're forgettable.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing like finding ways to stick out. And when you mentioned people being angry at you all the time, like so much PTSD just flashing through my head of times where been yelled at or hollered at. And I wouldn't consider myself that annoying. You learn to be persistent and not, pestering, as I like to say. But yeah, you definitely go into run into situations where people are like, stop bothering me, quit. And they do anything they can to tell you to stop. So if you can do something to make them laugh, or at least make them think before they throw it away, that's going to help you on that next follow-up or that next contact. So that's awesome. That's really cool. So you do stuff like that. You also do what, consulting on top of that as well?
Yeah. We're like a, I don't know, there's like a trash can of options, right? Like ultimately we have advisory is what we call it. So like if you came in and you're looking at your sales process, whether it's just your outbound or it's a couple different, it's discoveries, it's closing, like wherever your problems are, we have an advisory program we put people through. But like ultimately, like what everything drives back to in our organization is fulfillment. So if you're a company that doesn't have salespeople that are achieving outcomes that you desire. We used to do training. We did it for like 5 years almost. Okay. This is the first year that we haven't really done quote unquote training. Because the problem with that is that like 5 of the 50 people that you put to the program are going to actually do it. And even though they end up filling the gap and getting record years for the organization, we got 45 people that still, just kind of like existing. And so what, like B players and C players, right? Like, do they exist? Yeah, in competitive environments. But if you culture that, there's nothing good about that. So what we figured, about a year ago was we need to make some changes here. We need to not just go in and show people what to do and how to do it and provide them with all the resources. You just do it for them. So we become more of like a boutique agency, if you will, for sales. So you hire us on as like a sales rep, and we're in the bullpen, like we're a ghost because, we're just an empty chair because we're remote, but we use the mail system, which is highly effective. People just don't know how to do it right is the thing. There's a lot of rules that have changed, mail forwarding, digitizing mail. So there's a lot of ways to get to people, remote or not, through the mail. So we use the mail, and then we have a system of follow-up, which is way different than agencies that are doing just straight cold calling, using their pitches, which are great. I have a couple of great friends that run agencies like that, but our calls are hated. This is the guy that sent you that trash can in the mail. And the conversion of that is insane. I mean, we'll take a list of 150 people, and 51 of them will become disqualified really fast because they'll respond. I got your letter. We don't have what you offer though, and we don't need it. Thank you though. So like, enrichment, things like that are important, right? But like, imagine that you I say it this way, because imagine you put a rep into that seat and gave them 150 names and said, like, get some responses. And 51 of those people don't even qualify, but you never hear from them. You chase them for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
What a wild thought, man. And so like, we're helping organizations to understand list integrity, data integrity. We're helping organizations to understand that sales doesn't have to be done the way that everybody does it.
Right.
And that ultimately, like, even if this idea becomes mainstream, it's freaking good for the buyer. So people say all the time, like, well, it works now, buddy, but enough people are doing this, it ain't gonna work anymore. Like, bro, everyone calls and says, hi, this is a sales call. Do you want to hang up? Hi, can I have 27 seconds of your time? Like, everybody says that. So like, what's the difference? Well, the difference is that people like ours. Right? People really enjoy the experience. And again, like, when they don't, it doesn't really matter that much, right? So I think the problem, and why I bring that up, is that people are afraid of those risks. Well, freaking just hire us and we'll do it for you, man. And then like, and if we don't work, fire us, right? Like, you've got 12 months of us building a pipeline for you, basically, which is highly effective. And then you just fire us and take the pipeline and go close it however you want if you feel like it, right?
Yeah.
But additionally, like, an individual, like, if an individual is listening right now that doesn't like have 30 grand to hire us as a sales rep and then pay us commission, like, an individual can go to the Rebel Arcade and just buy the tutorials, $24.99 all the way up to $4.98, right? At like the different packages. And you get a little coaching with that. You get resources with that, and show you exactly how to build these campaigns for contact marketing, how to implement them, your ICP, how to speak to them effectively through written word, how to follow up with them effectively over the phone and through email after you're using these mediums. So we're really like for the people is how we look at it. Like, we're for the rebels. Like, we want everybody to be able to experience rebellion. So if your boss is like, no, we would never bring these guys in for a workshop to show all 50 people for 3 days, or no, we would never hire them for 12 months to do sales for us, or, like, no, I'm not putting you in one of their sales cohorts. You can just like out of your own pocket spend $100, $200, buy our playbooks and go implement them yourself. And then we have a free community that attaches to that as well too, for people that just want to come and like get some feedback and say like, yo, I sent 100 things in the mail and I didn't have the greatest experience. I need some help, and allow, our ecosystem, our community, our people to breathe life into them. So, I mean, ultimately, I think what we're turning into, bro, like, just in a nutshell, is we're turning into a community for people that's more in person than it is anything else. Yeah. That we're not a community that offers like a service that we coach you on for you to go and implement. We offer life transformational moments for you that go beyond sales, that help you to think bigger about your life. Because as soon as you make that $20,000 commission check for the first time in your life at 27 years old, or 21, or 47, because you've been jerked around your entire sales life thinking that, $2 or $3 grand is acceptable, right? But instead, we get you those big wins. But I'm telling you, your life changes in a flash. And especially with the things that we preach, it's not go buy a dope car and a big house. It's cool. How much time does that buy you with your kids, with yourself, with your spouse, with your friends? How much time does that buy you to invest back into your own life? How many times do you need to make that check in order to just stop altogether? Having to make a big check, right? And just go be a greeter at Walmart for the rest of your life and like live in happiness. Yeah. And like, we really, 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 really preach the identity of doing what you love. And we believe that sales is a great place to start that. And that most people will end up making sourdough and selling it for $50 a loaf at like the local farmer's market because of what they found in the process of becoming a rebel. So rebellion is really a lifestyle. The sales rebellion in our product offering is life transformational. It's not just let's sell more stuff. It's let's be better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And with that, I noticed, you talk a lot about the joy of selling. Dude, sales is not always joyful. You know that. And I think it's counter-cultural almost to talk about it being a joy and something people can love doing. Because for me, like, I know through my career, it's been like, all right, this is the job. This is the career I chose. This is the path I went down. This is what I'm stuck in. And then coming back to it, almost like in the Young Frankenstein, where Gene Wilder's saying, destiny, destiny, no escaping, that's for me. That's how sales has felt for me most of my career. I try to avoid it. I try to be the Frankenstein, not Frankenstein, up until that moment where he realizes, oh, I am Frankenstein. And for me, that's a challenge. So tell me more about like that finding of joy. Like what does that mean within sales to you? And I mean, you've said a lot of it, I think, here, but I'd love you to kind of like sum it up.
Yeah, life is sales and sales is life is the way that I look at it. I don't box sales into like some kind of compartment. I see sales as like a literal motion of life. That in sales, just like in my life, I'm going to meet strangers and I have the opportunity to be impactful to those people, to give them something, which is, again, going back to the principles of servant leadership, but also to the principles of just being a good person and living a good life. So if we really look at like life is, we wake up in the morning, we do, 8 cold plunges and, 7,000 push-ups or whatever y'all do.
And roll a banana on your face and all that.
Banana water. And and then we go to work, right? We eat lunch. We get out of work. We hang out with friends, watch Severance, whatever. Life is very predictable, ultimately. Yeah. It's the same thing over and over again. And it's very simple things. And those things do what for us? They bring us joy, except for work. Right. And the way that you described it, I think is beautiful because it's like, well, life hasn't been good to me, bro. When I think of what you just said about sales, but I still find joy in life all the time. I think that the real opportunity is finding the failure. That's what brings you joy. I love it when somebody says something like, you know what? I don't like what you're sending me in the mail. It's weird. It happens. It's rare, but it happens. I love that. I love to say to that person, sorry that it came across that way for you. I'll cease and desist, hang up on them instead of trying to do something crazy with them. And then immediately I'll do a little research, call the front desk. Hey, what's Jeff's favorite thing? And then like a ghost or a fart in the wind, right? Like I'm in and out and no one even knows I existed. I'll send him something without my name attached to it, nothing, and just say, hey, someone out here wants you to know that you're appreciated. Because when I hear some people say things like that, I think, man, they don't get enough joy in their life. They don't have the things that I have. They don't have a incredible wife. They don't have 2 amazing kids that I shouldn't even have, bro. I should be dead. My story is that 2014, I should have been gone. Right? I'm a miracle. I'm a product of grace. So when I think of joy, I think, bro, everything in life is joy for me. Right? Again, because of my story, because of the things I've experienced, because of the fact that I shouldn't be sitting here with you right now, which gives me chills every time when I think about it. Just how miraculous my existence is. And I totally take advantage of it. I eat too much, I play too much, right? But I love my life. I love the good. I love the bad. I love the indifference. I love the ugly, all of it. I find joy in it instead of stress and anxiety. I'm a patient person. I seek out moments where I have to test that and challenge that. And in sales, I think when you make the commitment to it, what you have to understand is that because it's a part of life, that's why it's the hardest thing for people to do. Because me and my preferences, I would prefer that my life look like this. But I am not the driver. And that's the thing that most people don't understand. I might impact the decisions through my action and my free will, if we even have that in the first place, right? Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But sure, I have to be the one that makes the decisions. But man, if I could just surrender and die to myself every day, my life would be full of joy. And those are the decisions that I made a long time ago. So a kid is getting out of hand at the home front, standing up in his chair, screaming and yelling at his mom. Sure, there's an appropriate way to reprimand that child and to help that child learn versus one that's not. But you can find joy in that moment. Just like when someone tells you to F off and never email me again, you can find joy in that moment. I'm going to write an email. I'm going to print it. I'm going to send it in the mail and with a little note that says, hey, you said never to email you again. So I sent this one in the mail. And literally when I call back or behind that guy, either they have a restraining order, it's over, Dale, or they got a really good moment from that. Even if it wasn't a chuckle, it was more impressive, right? Or intense. Can't believe this guy actually did this. Yeah. Which hopefully just opens people's mind to what joy really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, the way you're describing it, too, it's not just, and I've always thought of joy this way, too, of it's not just about having fun. Joy is really more than just being pleased with something in the moment, or something that, like what Marie Kondo, like, sparks joy in you. It's not just something that makes you happy. Joy can be something that you feel even when things are tough. And having that ability to identify that, I think that's a great perspective on it, because a lot of people, including myself, you're going to get down on yourself. You're going to get frustrated. Oh, I didn't close this. I didn't close that. Oh, this didn't go my way. And all of a sudden things start to fall apart. And it's really easy to get stuck in those moments and then just to give up entirely. So I think that's a really good perspective on it. So that's awesome. So you mentioned you're doing Totality. What is Totality? Tell me about that.
Simply put, if people are ready for something different, if they're ready for something that isn't going to teach them to be a better seller or a better marketer or a better business owner, but it's going to teach them to take risks, to challenge themselves, to do things that are unpopular, if you will, with the end goal in mind of becoming a better person that will subsequently make them better at their profession. Totality is for you. And really what we decided is, like, there's a lot of people out there that's like, we're the anti-sales conference, or we're the anti-conference. And then you go to them and it's like, are you sure about that?
It's just a conference.
Yeah, y'all are still just throwing a conference together. Just, I'm not getting pitched as much as I normally would. I'm still getting pitched, right? But ours is a community-based concept that you don't know the agenda when you come. You know that there's speakers, but we also don't have any speakers. It's nothing but live workshops.
Oh, wow.
It's nothing but interactive workshops as well, too. So, like, you're immersed into something that you didn't even know was going to happen in the first place.
Do something. You can't just nurse a hangover the whole time.
That's true. And actually, there's no alcohol at Totality either.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. We do everything actually against the grain of the way the conferences work. So we make it exciting. There's tons of twists and turns, lots of very just experiential moments for people, instead of just like oh, that was a great talk. It's like I participated in what just happened just now that I didn't know was going to even happen in the first place. We have it at a place we call the Rebel Hideaway, which is really fun because the lore of the sales rebellion is that there's all these mythological creatures and people like the Copier Warrior. And we've got a guy with a personal brand called the Finance Viking. And it's fun. Like, we've built this mythical place and all this lore. Will you come and experience that lore, dude, in person? It's like you said earlier, there's more to this name, dude. I feel I'm a nerd. I said it right earlier. I'm a nerd, man. Like, when people come to Totality, their life changes because of what we desire for them, not what we want to build ourselves. Like, we're meeting people where they are. Like, most people that came for Totality 1, 90% of the feedback was, I would never say yes to something like this. I didn't even know what to pack in my bag other than a toothbrush, But I just trusted that this was going to be insane, and holy cow, you delivered. And that was just the first one, bro, on a shoestring budget, and losing money even. Like, so imagine what it's going to look like in year 2. And then I've already planned 10 of these, man. I've never told anybody that outside of the close circle. So you're getting an exclusive right here, but I've planned 10 of these. So because who knows, like, what eventually, when you build something, what you're trying to work toward, the thought is that in most cases we have this idea of the outcome. Man, I'm here for the journey. So when I sat down and made the first one, I was like, okay, but what does the second one look like? And then by the time I got to 10, I went, oh man, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this. And the idea is that if we can ultimately allow people to dream the same way that we are through Totality, giving them permission to just think outside the box, to be rebellious, to be more creative in their work life and their personal life, to be more present in their work life and their personal life, to really like experience this thing that we get to do as people together. We were talking about the actual Totality, like the eclipse, right? Going to that, like a lot of people have never experienced that, dude. And then the people that have, when you ask them, like, what was it like? If they didn't have their phone out recording everything, they'll say, oh my God, like, you suddenly realize how small you are in the grand scheme of things when everything goes black. Right. From a moon in front of a sun. Like, this is insane what's happening right now, right? But that's exactly the kind of feeling we want people to have at Totality. We want to break you to the point of like, oh my God, am I letting them do this to me? Sadness, overwhelming emotions of, man, am I doing enough? Man, am I trying hard enough? Absolutely what we want you to feel in those moments. Because otherwise you go to a conference and you leave and you're like, oh my God, that was great. And then you get pitched for 9 weeks, from a bunch of people you never met that go, thanks for coming by our booth, and
Oh gosh,
it's just such a nightmare, right, in general. And then ultimately it's this idea too of like micro meetups, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So we cap it at 150. I'll probably do less than that this year. We did 100 people year one.
Mm-hmm.
We had a hurricane, like literally
the
eye of the storm came over where we had the event. Right.
Were you in East Tennessee or where were you this
year? We were up here in Knoxville, and we're here again.
Golly.
This year, right? So, but like, we still had an amazing turnout, even despite the storm. People still landed somehow and got to the event. It was crazy, dude. Yeah. All right, and we got to experience what it's like to just like have 100 people in a room, right? Like, so we're not going to go much bigger than that. I'll probably cap it at 125. We're like 50, 60% tickets sold right now. This time last year, we had 9 tickets sold, right? Like, it's a whole new thing for us, right? But I believe we're doing it right. I believe that we're doing it effectively. I believe that we've started something. Yeah. I won't be surprised to see other people doing it too, and giving us zero credit, which is totally fine. But I won't be surprised by that at all, because, man, people are looking for this. And that's the ultimate outcome of the question is that you're looking for this. If you're listening to this right now and you're hearing this, I promise you that even if you don't think you are, I bet when you show up and have the experience that you leave going, holy cow, I needed that so bad, more than I knew.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, because I actually had a chance. I was spying on you a bunch last night doing my research for this interview. But I looked at a little bit of your documentary series that you did on last year and everything you're doing there. And I could tell like it's definitely a different event. It's definitely something that people I think would really get a lot out of, especially having been in the sales room. Like I've been in a room in an auditorium in Little Rock, Arkansas with Zig Ziglar and his whole crew of people, which aren't direct salespeople, but they definitely are, the motivational types. And they'll tell you how to get $1 million overnight if you sign up for this one thing. And I think Rudy Giuliani spoke at that. He did. Yeah. Shoot. Good Lord. Yeah. That was wild.
Sorry.
I know. Thank you. Yeah. I didn't notice the oil running down the face or anything. But yeah, anyways, so that was just a wild flashback in my head just now, but yeah, you're used to that, or you're used to these sales training events you have to go to. And it's like, I mean, again, I'll go back to my AT&T days. It's like I would be in a room in, Dallas, Texas, and you just be in a windowless room for hours on end and learning sales principles and reading things and falling asleep and trying to stay awake and hope you can get to the evening when you can use your per diem and go out and get some good food and beer and just be done. So the idea that you're doing it differently, even down to no alcohol, I don't know if it's a personal principle that you're not doing that for, or if it's hey, we want people to be focused at this conference and we don't want the hangovers every day during the event. But that idea alone is like different. It stands out, and it's going to be for people that want that difference. And I think that that's cool. So yeah, I think you're doing something neat.
Thanks, dude.
I think you're doing some cool stuff. And I'm not just saying that to like just brag on you, but I've been really fascinated with everything you've done with the Sales Rebellion. So it's really neat to be able to learn more about it today, learn more about what you're doing. Last question on the Sales Rebellion. I noticed on the website you have a button for submitting a prayer request. What's that about?
My business is a ministry. Just like I said that sales is life, I also believe that like in all facets of everything that I do, that I want to make sure that people understand my purview is, or really like, I should say that the vision of my life is not what I'll do on this earth. It's eternal is the idea. It's that I'm looking at something completely different than what everybody else is. So when you see a website and you see this cool thing that this guy is doing, I really want people to understand too that like I don't find that to be the most important thing in my life. The most important thing in my life is people. And ultimately in my faith and the way that I live my faith and I practice my faith and I've learned my faith and I've become deeply ingrained in my faith is that people matter more than we let on. And that in most cases, something as simple as letting a person, which by the way, we have thousands of submissions, letting a person just reflect for a minute, first on like what they're grateful for and then what we could pray for them for. And like knowing, even if we never contact them, if they're not interested in that, knowing that someone out there is lifting them up, even if they don't believe in the same God that I do, or they don't follow the same religious principles that I do, just knowing that a person cares that much to stop what they're doing and lift them up, or to take a minute out of their morning and to lift them up. It's that joy principle that we keep coming back to in this conversation, really. How do I give people joy in their life by helping them to see how important they truly are? And again, like through my religious principles, I think that I believe I'm a follower of Jesus, bro. To me, it's that, right? It's love for everyone, man. Eternal love too, not just while you're here on earth, but this idea of like, where are you headed? What does the story look like when you're gone? Who will you bring with you through the process? I think that we look at that as more of a fairy tale than we do as reality in this generation and in this world in general. I think that we've dumbed religion down to a like church, like an organization even. We don't live it on a daily basis. It's just Sunday or whenever we did our Hail Marys. Shout out to my Catholic friend over here, but the real principle to me is like, well, what about every other day? What about every other moment? What about the ability to be able to let other people in on what it is that you do without it being a place where they think they might be judged or where they don't believe they can go?
Right.
What if you give them that outlet? And that's why there's a prayer request on the page.
I love it. That's awesome. I'm a big believer in like, I'm a big believer, period. I am a Christian as well. But one of the things I'm big on is like not just including a Jesus fish on your website if you're going to preach your faith. Like that to me is the most annoying thing ever, because how many times have you seen it there and then you know something about that company and you're like, or you've heard something about them like that just completely discredits everything else about that. I think it's not the worst thing in the world, but like claiming it versus doing it is something different. So seeing that button on your website really stuck out to me as like, oh, he's really doing it. And hearing you get people submitting and stuff like that's a great way to connect with people. And, even if you're not going to respond directly to them through that, it's just an anonymous prayer request thing. Like the fact that you're doing that, you're thinking, you're praying, like all that stuff is awesome. So yeah, I just found it really neat. So
thanks, bro. Our mission statement, just for everybody to hear, is to tear down the castles of the old guard and to build a kingdom of rebels. And that kingdom mindset is really what we lead with in all things, including the way that we wear our ministry on our sleeves. So
yeah. That's awesome. Okay, well, this is We Built This Brand. I always have this wrap-up question, so I'm going to ask it to you anyway. I always like to know, like, what brand out of everything that you deal with and everything in your life right now, what brand do you admire the most?
I think the most disruptive brand right now that I admire a lot, I think a lot of people don't like the brand because of their name, mostly. And they've done some really weird stunts as well, too, like I saw something, actually a guy in my network, friend of mine showed me like where they hired a witch doctor to like for an advertisement, right? Like it was total stunt, right? But they made people think that they were like cursing their product for everybody to be cursed,
Yeah.
Total stunt, right? But anyway, so I think they get a bad rap because of things like that in some circles, but bro, they are the literal definition of disruptive and they're called Liquid Death.
Oh yeah.
And when you think about how they started, there's three things that I admire the most about them. One is that the world was inundated with cans of energy drinks, right? So when you go to the gas station, you can get a can of energy drink or a plastic bottle of water. And a lot of the time it's an emotional decision, man. So you look at this cool can with this awesome artwork and like, I could use a little energy even to an extent, and you buy that. And like water's just like, I can get that out of the sink.
Yeah.
Whatever. And so they've disrupted that whole mindset of the consumer that goes in to buy. And this is real. These are facts, bro. I've learned a lot about this brand. I really admire them. I'm trying to get them to be the main sponsor of Totality. It'll happen one day. Don't worry about that. But the second thing that I love is that part of their model too was like going to bars and saying, hey, like, instead of this like tap water out of this gun, will you put our water up here and just like, because it's so metal, like you said earlier about me and my existence, right? Like These guys, they are so smart. They go to all these bars and they go, here's cases of our water, sell it to your people. And people just buy it because it looks like a big can of beer, right? Like literally that's why people psychologically were just like, oh, this is cool. And then they drank 16 ounces of water after too many drinks, which helps sober them up. Right. Which helps their health in general. Maybe not. Maybe it's a stretch there to say that. But again, the thought of how to disrupt a bar market with water it's a losing thought, right? Unless you're liquid death. And then the third thing that I admire the most about them is they are so risky with the way that they advertise. I mean, like pregnant moms drinking their water for the Super Bowl ad, I think is what it was. And like they sell a casket full of their water because, and just their whole mantra of like, murder your thirst. What a genius idea, man. I mean, they're a really disruptive brand. Again, I respect the people out there that don't like the word death on a can that they're drinking water out of, or some of the weird stuff that they've done. But like, it's like I said earlier, I'm that guy, bro. I'll hang out with those people, right? I don't have to be a part of them, but like you can influence people that way as well too. And like, and ultimately I do think to an extent too, like, you should learn about these guys. I've gotten to know some of them over the time that I've spent, like trying to get them to sponsor us, and they're good people, dude. I think at the core of what they're doing, they're misunderstood by the public, but they're a huge brand now because there's a lot of us out there that like, dude, every time I stop for water, I grab, or at a gas station for what used to be a Dasani. Dasani is disgusting. Yeah. A smart water, whatever, I just grab a liquid death now, dude. I don't even think about it. I get 2, as a matter of fact, every time. And I think a lot of people do that because they see less plastic. There's still plastic in those cans. I'll just say there's a lining of plastic in it, but less plastic. It's promoting something different. It's super disruptive. It's fun. Like especially if you don't have kids going, "What's a liquid death?" Like although my kids don't even question that, they just go, "Dad, the design on that is so dope." I'm like, "Yeah, it's cool, right?" So anyway, I think those guys are doing it right.
Yeah, no, for sure. My 6-year-old was asking me the other day if he could get liquid death, and it's always cute hearing it from your son. "Daddy, can I have liquid death?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, that's fine, yeah, whatever. You can have liquid death, son."
I got carded buying it the other day, by the way.
No way. Someone actually carded you?
Swear to God, I was like, they go, "When's your birthday? I need your ID," and I was like,
you do realize this is water.
I just looked at him and was like, "Well, this is going to be awkward for you." And I pulled my ID out and I handed it to him, and they were like, "Why?" And they rang it up and it shows this water like on it. And they're like, "Oh my God, that is awkward."
I am in shock, but that's hilarious.
Pretty funny, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Liquid Death is just one of those brands you just can't get away from. Like they're just so good at branding and marketing, and their content is amazing. They partnered with Elf Cosmetics to do like a whole makeup kit too. Like they do the wildest things. I just love it. So that's awesome. Well, good. Well, Dale, where can people connect with you? Where can people find out about you? Maybe even sign up for Totality if they're interested.
Yeah, you can. Everything that we do, you can find on salesrebellion.com. We're doing a lot of changes to the website and whatnot in the brand, but Totality's on there. A lot of our resources are on there, our advisory programs, stuff that we talked about earlier. Really, I would recommend people like just Google my name. I know it sounds like kind of vain or egotistical, but it's just kind of simple to find. And I have a lot of guest podcasts. I have a lot of just PR in general that I've done. So if people want to just like snag some free resources and learn a little bit more about our methodology, what we do, how we change the game, how we differentiate, how we lead as servants, just Google my name or Google the Sales Rebellion in general. Our content feeds, our best ones are LinkedIn for sure. It's where most of our audience is. But you can find me on all the major channels. I'm a TikToker. Not really, but sort of. I dabble in the tiki-taki with my own videos, but wherever it's most accessible to the listeners. But ultimately, like salesrebellion.com is where you get all the resources. And then, again, there's plenty of free stuff out there for people to come and just learn and start thinking like a rebel.
Excellent. Well, Dale, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate the time.
It's been a pleasure.